Today with me we have Patrick Reyes, who is a senior principal at Infosys Consulting with over 25 years of technology experience and a computer science degree from UC Santa Barbara.
A field that I specialize in is basically SAP ERP implementation. So for your audience, you can look it up at sap.com. But basically, it's an enterprise resource planning tool that's developed in Germany. It's a direct competitor to Oracle, and it's very large scale and enterprise level. So typically, implementations with SAP are multi-year and multi-million dollar implementations. And SAP Joule is basically their version of ChatGPT for the enterprise. And essentially what it does is a few things. You can, of course, prompt it and run queries and get results and data points on financial elements, including manufacturing and supply chain data points, so you can understand what's happening at the enterprise level.
So how much of this implementation was actually human in the loop?
I wanted to mention is that the human intervention element was still there. So one of the big things with AI agents and agentic AI that stakeholders and the leadership at companies tend to believe by reading and listening to news articles and so forth is that everything gets automated, which is not the case. So of course, I think the biggest thing is leadership support from an enterprise at the CXO level to say, we are going here, this is what we're going to do, and this is what AI is about. So this top-down approach helps to build a strong foundation of communication and leadership so that the rest of the company can buy into it.
Hi everybody and welcome to another episode of What About AI Agents. Today with me we have Patrick Reyes, who is a senior principal at Infosys Consulting with over 25 years of technology experience and a computer science degree from UC Santa Barbara. He's currently based in Switzerland, where he specializes on AI implementations for enterprise clients, particularly in the pharmaceutical sector. So really interested to talk to Patrick specifically because agentic is getting big right now, and the way that enterprise is working on agentic adoption, I would assume, is slightly different from the way mid-market or even SMBs are doing it. So you as a principal are in the forefront of this. I haven't done consulting myself in over 8 years, but so I'm really excited to hear how things are changing and where they're going, and a little bit about what you're working on.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you for the introduction, Philippe. Much appreciated. So I can give a little bit of background on what I'm working on, and in particular, it would be interesting to share some of the lessons learned, including the challenges that we faced with implementing AI agents for some of the companies here in Switzerland that I work for as clients. And in so doing, perhaps your audience will learn something, and maybe we can make this an interesting podcast for a large audience. Okay. So is it okay if I start, Philip,
Yeah.
with some
Yeah.
examples? Great. So, I'm currently working on a few client accounts, and you did mention pharmaceutical companies, but I also do some other accounts in banking that I've been through, including agriculture here in Switzerland, particularly in the northern part of Switzerland, where they have a lot of the bigger multinational companies. And a field that I specialize in is basically SAP ERP implementation. So for your audience, you can look it up at sap.com. But basically, it's an enterprise resource planning tool that's developed in Germany. It's a direct competitor to Oracle, and it's very large scale and enterprise level. So typically, implementations with SAP are multi-year and multi-million dollar implementations. The largest one I've been on so far is a $500 million implementation over a time scale of 10 years that globally implements SAP at all the offices of a multinational company that I've worked at. So to focus on AI agents for SAP in particular, including ChatGPT, which is one of the tools I used, So SAP has a tool called SAP Joule. It's called Joule. You can look it up online. And SAP Joule is basically their version of ChatGPT for the enterprise. Um, and essentially, what it does is a few things. You can, of course, prompt it and run queries and get results and data points on financial elements, including manufacturing and supply chain data points, so you can understand what's happening at the enterprise level more quickly, efficiently, without having to run reports. The other thing it offers is a chat bot, so you can query customer service requests. You can look up information quickly on employees, internal company data, and so forth. And the third thing is it also offers AI agent capabilities. So what we did with SAP Joule, and I'll get to ChatGPT next as the other AI agent scenario we set up, is we developed an agent to basically run some enterprise level processes, particularly on the manufacturing floor. So, for those of you in the audience that may have been on a manufacturing floor or worked on a manufacturing floor, you will know right away that it involves a lot of different steps, end to end, including interaction with systems, interfaces, and so forth, in order to get a product built. So typically, there's a lot of steps that can be automated, which we did with SAP Joule. For example, in the pharma industry, when a package is produced for a particular medication and it goes on the shelf, there are some particular steps in order to make the package, to print it, to do the labeling, and so forth, as well as doing the dispensing of the product at local pharmacies. So some of the steps here were automated with agents. So typically, well, the results that we saw is a user on the manufacturing floor can ensure that things are happening in terms of the labeling and printing and the manufacturing of a pharmaceutical product, and they can just hit a button or confirm something has been done. And then in the background, all of the financial transactions, the manufacturing and supply chain steps that need to happen in the background in order for the item or the product to get from the manufacturing floor to the shelf and to the consumer gets automated. So labels are printed out, orders are put in with delivery and supply chain third-party providers like 3PL and 4PL services so that they can pick up the product and get it delivered to the right location and eventually to the pharmacies. So with SAP Joule, the implementation went quite well. We did see an increase in efficiency and turnaround for the manufacturing process, particularly optimizing things to the point that we were able to reduce the manufacturing processing time. So KPIs were met more consistently on the shop floor, which was quite important, particularly during times when a particular pharmaceutical product is in high demand, such as diabetic products and so forth. It would have been nice to have this during COVID, of course, because the demand for vaccines was very high, but unfortunately, this was a post-COVID implementation. But in the future, if there's something like COVID, hopefully not, knock on wood, this would be highly beneficial to get things to the consumer much quickly. In terms of lessons learned and challenges we face, did you have a question, Philippe? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So how much of this implementation was actually human in the loop, right? Because you're saying like it's very agentic, but I would believe that things like purchase orders and things like that, that would all would need human supervision. They would need to be reviewed by humans. Or are you saying it was completely agentic?
No, you're absolutely right. And this is the lesson learned and challenges that I wanted to mention is that the human intervention element was still there. So one of the big things with AI agents and agentic AI that stakeholders and the leadership at companies tend to believe by reading and listening to news articles and so forth is that everything gets automated, which is not the case. So human intervention at the end of the day is still required not only for things like POs, goods receipts, delivery confirmations, and so forth to ensure the end to end process is complete and done correctly, but sometimes along the process chain, there may be some events that could happen on the shop floor in the delivery process or the supply chain that could result in an error. For example, something is delivered late, it hits a KPI, flags an error, and some human needs to intervene to resolve it and figure out why it happened and do a root cause analysis so that in the future it doesn't happen again. So you are absolutely right, Philippe. Human intervention at the end of the day in this particular project I worked on was still required, but not to the extent that they were doing it manually before we implemented SAP Drill. So that was one of the learnings, of course. So it's very important to communicate to stakeholders and leadership that it's not a magic wand that you can magically, have things happen. You still do need some element of human intervention to deal with the errors, to deal with supply chain failures, natural events that may happen, weather, storms, all kinds of events can happen that are out of our control during the life cycle of a product and up to the point it gets delivered that, unfortunately you need a human to step in to kind of resolve it. So, yeah, uh, yes, of course. I think one good example is with the 3PL logistics provider who actually picked up the product from the warehouse and deliver it to the pharmacies, delivery centers. Is we had a situation where the delivery driver was unavailable that day and there was no deputy or backup available to collect it. And this was in a particular country in Europe. And unfortunately, what happened is he was ill, and the 3PL provider didn't have a replacement for that day. So everything kind of went haywire where AI agent and the automation was expecting it to get picked up at a particular hour, date, time.
So you were talking about when things go wrong, and I also would like to hear about when things go right, right? So like, yeah, sometimes like they expect and I guess they hallucinate the problem, but it's this is what you're working on a highly regulated industries, and I can imagine they start to freak out when things go wrong, when things get right. How do they get even an approval for like agentic to be in place of these highly, 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 highly sensitive fields like pharmaceuticals or other multinational manufacturing? How do they get approval to allow AI to be a part of that decision making?
Of course, that's an excellent question, particularly for the pharma industry. The way they get approval is they have a mechanism or a process in place at pharmaceutical industries called GXP, which is good practices in the laboratory, in the manufacturing floor, etc. And you need to do what's called computer system validation, or CSV for short, before you can put anything in production. So in order to do the project that I was on, we had to go through a 3-month long process to get the agents and the automation approved with the right stakeholders within the company, but also we had auditors outside of the company that would audit to make sure we as a company are doing things correctly. So that's basically the nature of the pharma industry where they use GXP and computer system validation methodologies and tools and steps to make sure that it's properly tested, to make sure that the data is correct, the inputs and outputs values are correct, and so forth. Even another thing that we did is before we started the project, we did a POC, proof of concept, to get to the MVP version. So it's highly regulated. You are correct, Philippe, and that's how we solved it using what's currently in place at the company.
So they would, so they are passing it through. Okay, that makes sense. And you've used both SAP Jules and Gemini to build agents, and you said also about ChatGPT and OpenAI. Pardon me. Then, what is the difference? So, what is the core difference that you find between all three of them? And what are some of the things that you prefer in one or the other? Like, tell us about that.
Yeah, of course. So SAP Joule is very focused on SAP. It's designed to understand the ERP system, the different modules there. So it's specifically configured and developed to function with SAP primarily. But when you need to do anything outside of the ecosystem of SAP, this is where we had to leverage ChatGPT and Gemini. So Gemini is primarily being used for office and workspace activities. So looking up information online, summarizing information in office documents such as Excel, PowerPoint, and so forth. And then ChatGPT, we use it primarily to develop a chatbot, which allowed people to query higher level information about the company, employee information, information about departments and divisions and so forth. But SAP Joule is really focused on the inner workings of SAP.
Hmm. Right. So they're essentially different platforms, and they are doing different things. And so you wouldn't necessarily choose one over the other, but you would bring things like Gemini or like ChatGPT to supplement the functionality of an existing SAP Joule implementation.
Precisely, yes. It was on a use case basis. So we were selective based on what would be the most optimal tool to use for particular use cases.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So how do you so once you build an AI agent and you're ready to push it into production, how do you introduce it to the workers? Have you been involved as part of that? Was there any kind of like any learnings from that? Because I can imagine that agentic adoption, especially in Europe, would face some sort of a backlash. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe everybody was like super like keen, like "Yeah, let's like replace ourselves with AI." Like how were people reacting to it as their rollout was happening and they were getting these new agentic capabilities into their existing manual workflows?
Yeah, well, particularly with this project, it was actually welcomed by the employees primarily because the strategy and the vision for implementing at the company was driven at the top. So at the CXO level, they said and communicated to the company the roadmap and the future of doing things within our information technology infrastructure is going to be leveraging AI agents, chatbots, and so forth in order to optimize and make our work more efficient. So, because it was driven at the top, a top down approach versus a bottom up approach, uh, employees immediately invested in it and felt confident that it could be successful. Now, the challenge is how do you educate them so they know exactly how to use the tool successfully and to the highest level of efficiency possible. And what happened is because it was a strategic decision at the company, they invested in things such as walk-in sessions, virtual walk-in sessions globally to learn about agentic AI, including ChatGPT, Gemini, and SAP Joule. We also had dedicated trainings that were available throughout the course of multiple months at a global level for people to join. Uh, so this was on-site and virtual trainings. And there were also offline training sessions where you could watch videos and get a certificate at the end of the video after passing a test to make sure you understand what it means to use these technologies and tools in your day-to-day work. So the investment level to educate people at the company was very high, supplanted by the strategic direction and vision of the company at a CXO level. So that's how we managed to get our work around that challenge in particular.
So, and once the employees started to use this agentic system, can you give me like a specific example of what was the biggest improvement that people saw? Like, what was the aha moment where people said, "Well, this is amazing! Like, this agentic is helping us do things faster, do this faster." Like, what was it that like really made people feel excited about this tech?
Well, I think the excitement is the first thing that comes to mind and that I experience is that people had a new way to communicate with their IT tools. Before, it's punching in data on your keyboard, pointing and clicking, generating reports, reviewing data, measuring them against KPIs and other systems and so forth. But now all these different components were kind of centralized in one interface, supported by the automation of processes using AI agents. So this was a huge value add to them. And to give you a practical example, if you take Gemini of ChatGPT for any user out there that's sitting at home, it's kind of like the early days of Google when it came out, where you would type in a query and you would get search results. And now it's a way for you to ask a system for information using natural language, which is very easy for us as humans because we can say, give me the latest statistics on this particular manufacturing process for the past X number of days or weeks, and highlight all the different issues that arose and summarize it for me. And then it gives you a report. And then you can optimize your prompts to get better results. So I think that was one of the biggest things that people said, finally, I don't have to punch in my keyboard in so many different applications, point and click and go here to A, B, and C. Now everything is central for me.
Yeah, I guess it simplifies a lot of the processes, especially with things like tool calls and like deeply integrated agents. Because yeah, I remember using SAP and at my corporate days, and it was a very, very complicated piece of software, so to speak. It still is, but I guess agents are now making it easier, and this will improve Gen Z adoption of such tech as well. When we talk about maturity, it is you mentioned it's a young technology. It's fairly young, and after you've implemented these systems at scale, right? What are some of the biggest misconceptions that executives have about AI agents and what they can do today? And what are some of because you have to manage expectations, especially as a consultant. That's all we do. We manage expectations, and right.
Is very true. I think one of the biggest things is how to overcome the uh, fear, uncertainty, and doubt of the new technology, particularly for people that are not tech savvy. In the workplace, even in their personal lives, there is an element of fear and some uncertainty and doubt which needs to be overcome through educating them, informing them, and giving them different ways of educating them and informing them, so that they can elevate and increase their knowledge and be experts, hopefully, in how to use these tools more efficiently and effectively. I often give an example of how, with some family members of mine that are older age, of course, uh, than me, who are using technology, so often they struggle. I mean, I've seen sometimes cases where, uh, they're much older and using an iPhone can get complicated. They don't know where to tap and so forth. But I have a very practical way of approaching it because I used to be a trainer teacher in information technology, where I would sit down with them, educate them, but I would always find a different way to approach it because sometimes I could send them a YouTube video on how to learn something, or other times you could sit down with them one to one to teach them something. And this is exactly why at the company I was at, they were successful because they provided multiple ways of teaching people: hands on sessions, workshops, virtual sessions, on site trainings, and so forth, because everybody has a different learning style. So,
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. So, um, uh, people do have learned. People are not older people not as keen on adopting AI. We had a conversation with some people who said that like different age groups use AI differently, and I think Sam Altman said the same thing that older people use it like Google, while like kids are using it for everything to talk about their lives as a therapist. It serves as like their primary primaries serve as their best friend and advisor, so to speak. So, but the technology is still young, and I think everybody's going to get to that adoption level at some point. Um, for our listeners who are consultants or are in transformations, how are you like at Infosys approaching like AI transformation? How like because like I'm hearing like Sam Altman, he's starting a consulting division at OpenAI, and Y Combinator they're investing into like consultative AI agent building tools. So they're coming after the consulting market. How do you currently approach a transformation? Because I can imagine a lot of large organizations are reaching out to their consulting partners who they see as somebody who is forefront with those technologies to adopt new tech. So what is your current approach on educating them? How do you adopt this technology? How do you get agentic? Like how do you help them find out what are the good opportunities for going agentic and which areas, etc.?
yeah, that's an excellent point. Well, Infosys Consulting has a repetitive strategy that they use when new technologies are rolled out. It's a 3-point strategy. The first one is that we develop and publish white papers on particular subjects to demonstrate that we're experts in the field. And these white papers go out to our clients and customers for them to understand what is our point of view of the future of this technology, where it's going, where it's heading, how they can leverage in their enterprise. The second thing is we develop internally centers of excellence. So these are communities of people that are equipped with the right knowledge, tools, and expertise to educate the company internally on a new technology and platform like AI and agents and bots and so forth, chat bots. Um, and the centers of excellence are not only available to employees internally, so employees can educate themselves, but we also lead implementations with new clients and customers with the center of excellence to educate them before we actually implement a project. And then the third thing we have from the 3-point strategy is a knowledge base, which is searchable. You can query it. It has documentation, PowerPoints, and slides, and Word documents, and Excel documents about everything regarding a new technology such as AI. So employees can use them, and also we offer it as a searchable knowledge base for our customers and clients that are existing, so they can quickly look up information and educate themselves.
It's extremely interesting. Yeah, I've heard that many companies consider their knowledge base, their like or their like own proprietary knowledge is one of their biggest assets, because of the fact that there's a lot of know-how and a lot of very specific things that are not available to general public, right? And how do you safeguard that knowledge? So because nowadays everything is getting queried with AI. So how do you internally safeguard that knowledge so it doesn't get indexed on Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, so it becomes public knowledge?
Of course. Well, we close it off. Bottom line. We do not allow the system when we configure it, particularly when people prompt the database, to have it accessible by search engines and so forth. Plus, the other thing we do is on a contractual basis, we have a master service agreement, which basically outlines that the data can be used for A, B, and C within certain constraints. So we are protected contractually, and also when we launch the knowledge base, including the Center of Excellence data pillars of information, we ensure that it's not indexable and searchable by outside systems. It's within an intranet, to be specific, via VPN.
Right, right. No, this makes perfect sense. I was just curious. I didn't mean to overstep any boundaries here. I understand it's your proprietary stuff. I don't question it. I'm just trying to. I was just curious myself in this regard. Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. So, what would be the biggest takeaway that you can share with our listeners about implementing AI at large enterprise scale? Like, what do you feel like that would be like the more like what does your earned insight, something that nobody else knows about and only you feel like you know this? And
Of course, I think the biggest thing is leadership support from an enterprise at the CXO level to say, we are going here, this is what we're going to do, and this is what AI is about. So, this top down approach helps to build a strong foundation of communication and leadership so that the rest of the company can buy into it. I've been on a project before where it was a bottom up approach. Employees were saying, we need the AI, we need agents, we need chatbots, and so forth, but the leadership uh, at a particular point in time were not ready to fully support it. So they tried to mobilize internally, and it was failed. It failed. So that's the biggest takeaway. I think we need leaders to not just at companies and enterprises, but even at a government level, to say, the internet changed us in many ways for the better, and we invested in it greatly and look at its great success. And now we have AI. We need to do the same thing, learn from our mistakes when the internet rolled out, and adopt AI. So that's the big takeaway, I would say.
yeah, yeah, this actually very much resonates with your top up approach you were talking about before. And I was like, well, everybody is approaching it from bottom up, employees, it's grassroots movements. But then, unless there is a buy in from the top where they say, we are going to change, like, we're going to become, we had a chat with somebody else about becoming an AI first company. And that's something that the transformation that many companies will have to make over the next, I think, 10 to 15 years, being AI first, meaning that these agentic systems will have to be integrated everywhere and they become the kind of the new mode or the new strength that these companies have. We are not there yet, but to your point, it all starts at the leadership, and the leadership has to become aware that the companies who adopt this now are going to be so much further ahead because there is a thing it's called agentic mode. And as these agents start working together and the companies start improving how these agents work, their automations are going to be faster, more robust, better. You can take off the shelf solutions, but you still have to customize them towards your own business kind of style. And that's kind of what I thought when you said that. To me, that's spot on. It has to come from the top, and they have to make the transformation at a larger scale than just employees adopting it for their own personal needs.
Yeah. Correct. Precisely.
Yeah. So everybody, this is Patrick Rice. He is a very, very smart person. who has done this very big implementations. And Patrick, I understand that you also have your own kind of personal consulting group that you're working as, and maybe you would like to promote that to our like the Matterson Labs, and maybe you would like to a little bit promote that and tell people who should reach out to you, because I'm sure there are some people who want to speak with you and who want to get your expertise on these things.
I would be delighted to. Thank you, Philippe, for the opportunity to do that. I think the first place to start is my website, patrickreyes.com. All the information you know about my commercial and non commercial pursuits are there. So I do work for Infosys Consulting, which you did mention at the start of the podcast, as a senior principal. So I'm involved in these projects that we just discussed. Matterhorn Labs is also my startup SME. It's a tech company. So currently we have a few projects in the pipeline. We're just starting this year, so it's early stages. So I would say check out my website to learn everything about me. And there's an opportunity to book calls with me if you'd like to via Zoom. I'd be delighted to have calls with anybody interested in your audience that would like to have a chat. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for joining the call today, Patrick. I really appreciate it. It was a very insightful conversation. I hope our listeners feel the same.
Great. Thanks a lot.